I'm going to get stuff back. I got 2 minutes. But I'll coordinate it out. Yeah. Thanks, bud. Everything is quiet. What is this? CTE?
This time I'd like to call the Academic Services and Accountability Committee meeting to order. Like to have a roll call. Ms. Washington? Mr. Silver?
Here.
Mr. Silver? Mr. Bissett?
Here.
Mrs. S. Washington?
Sure.
Rhonda Washington?
Rhonda
She's
Bullock.
Rhonda Bullock.
I'm here.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Excuse me. At this time, Ms. Nancy Smith?
Good evening, Chairman Lamb, other academic services and accountability committee members, other board members, and Dr. Ellis. We stand before you to just share some updates of some things that are going on in the academics and accountability department. We have aligned this presentation to the district's priorities and the district's focus areas. And you will see that we're highlighting all 5 of our priorities and our focus areas. Let me begin by saying to you that we acknowledge that this year has been an extremely heavy lift for this department, but we do not shy away from a challenge. So we've embraced it. And we're doing all that we can to ensure that through intentional conversations and professional development, that we will move this district to the next level. We can't share with you in 30 minutes everything that we are engaged in. So we've started a monthly academics and accountability newsletter that highlights our staff and our teachers and some of their accomplishments. Our first goal, let me go back one. Our first goal focuses on effective staff and professional development. And more specifically, it is a focus on targeted professional learning. The second goal deals with continuous improvement and standards-based instruction. And the last thing that we'll talk to you about, again, is continuous improvement and professional development. Next slide. So we continue to focus on professional development. It is extremely important to us that we give teachers an opportunity to get better. So in creating professional development, we are ensuring again that it is instructionally relevant, that is actionable, that we continue to strengthen the blended and virtual instruction model. We have a laser-like focus on intentional planning because we believe that the roadmap to activating student learning is intentional planning and delivery. And we want to make sure that when we stand in front of children to teach, or when we teach via Zoom, that we are embedding those high yield strategies that will yield the most impact. Why invest in our teachers? Because professional development needs to be personalized. Red Oak Middle doesn't need the same thing that Southern Nash Middle School needs. So we need to give Red Oak Middle's teachers what they need. Aligned professional development has to be aligned to our academic content standards, student achievement standards, as well as assessments. We're not teaching to the test, but we would be fools if we did not prepare our students for what they would be assessed on at the end of the year. The most important thing is to monitor and assess the impact of the professional development on student achievement and staff effectiveness. Next slide. So if you've been in the district for a while, you know that we have engaged in some iteration of learning walks probably for the past 8 years. And every superintendent has had a different focus. Well, this year, our learning walks have shifted to truly developing effective and powerful teaching practices. And you will see later, as shared with you by Mr. Thompson, how our focus has become more intentional and we're matching our needs to what we see when we go into building. During our learning walks and after the learning walks, we engage in rich discourse. Sometimes that discourse can get uncomfortable because we have set a norm that we can respectfully agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, we make decisions that are best for children. In that discourse, we talk about what we see that is good, what we see that is bad, and what we see sometimes that is downright ugly. So in our spring focuses, we have completely shifted our look forwards. We visit schools in a tiered approach. So what that means is schools that we visited in the spring, in the fall, we may not visit those schools in the spring because these visits are more intentional as we focus on what these schools need. Next slide. We continue to implement the district's instructional framework, as well as the instructional design principles of remote teaching and learning that we've gotten from the Friday Institute. Next slide. Our data walks have become more data-based. So we engage in data dives where we're looking at attendance. We're looking at the correlation between grades and EOCs and iStation data. We're looking at EVOS data, and we actually dig very deeply into lesson plans and provide feedback. Our strategy, of course, is our walkthroughs. We study and analyze our data. We make some predictions, and then we debrief with the principal. When we leave the debrief with the principal is fully aware of next steps and when we will come back for the next cycle. Why district-wide professional learning communities? Simply put, professional learning communities, that's the time when all professionals in a building talk about children and specifically improving student outcomes. Those conversations are focused around 3 critical questions. What is it that we want all children to learn? How will we know when it has not been learned? And how will we respond to it when students are having difficulty or when the student meets or exceeds expectation in the learning? The answer to these 3 questions separate true professional learning communities from just traditional meetings. One thing that I'm extremely excited about is we shared with you that we've started district PLC meetings. And in those district PLC meetings, if you click on that link, you will see that every grade level district-wide, does it work? Every grade level district-wide has instructional goals and targets each month based on data that we've looked at. So I'll give you an example while Tremaine is clicking the link. In first grade, when we looked at our iStation data, one thing that we recognize is that students in kindergarten were really having a difficult time with vocabulary and letter knowledge. So we understand vocabulary because vocabulary is something that comes from home. So if students aren't exposed to that, then quite often they come to school with a limited vocabulary. So we talk to teachers about ways that they could harvest vocabulary and ensure that kids are exposed to that rich vocabulary just by reading to them. And we share strategies and actual resources that they could use to improve the letter knowledge skills. So the goal that we set is that by today, so kindergarten meets today, our expectation was that kindergarten students increased that letter knowledge and vocabulary in iStation increased by 10 points district-wide. So if you look at the district summary report in February, letter knowledge was at 185, but we wanted to increase to an average of 198 to 206, vocabulary 208 to 215. And then if you move down to second grade, we did the same thing. Of course, reading in second grade gets a little more complicated. So instead of looking at separate measures, we looked at the overall reading score. And again, that score was 229 as a district in February, and we set a target of 240 to 252 in March. And today was the kindergarten teachers' first PLC district-wide in March. Mr. Thompson will talk to you about the lesson plan and protocol that we've put in place.
As Ms. Nancy Smith mentioned before, in our walkthrough process, we really delve into lesson plans. And as you see here, we have lesson plan and protocols. And we answer 4 questions within these protocols. So first you see this is what should students know and be able to do? There we want to identify what objective, what are we looking that students should be able to do once they finish a lesson or that particular lesson? What should they understand once they finish that lesson? Next, we would say, how will the student and I know when they are successful? So not only do we know objectives, but the students will know when they will be successful, what measures they're going to hit, in assessments, what should they be able to complete? Also, we are looking at what learning experiences will facilitate their success. Okay, so what tasks, what actions are the teachers doing to help facilitate the success of the students? How are the teachers choosing those tasks are things we're looking at. And then lastly, based on data, how do I refine the learning experience for the students? So I'm looking at the data once all of this is complete and how has the student progressed and where do we need to go next with this student or this set of students? So from our walkthroughs, we have created, from the things that we have found out, we have created March Madness, which is PD for all our teachers in the district. And this PD will happen on Thursday, March the 11th. You see at the bottom, we have themed it around March Madness because of the NCAA tournament. So we thought that would be very neat for our teachers. But you see items such as student discourse, questioning, looking at formative assessment, tech tips. You also see that there are some grade level specifics. Elementary has some sessions, secondary has some sessions. And each of these sessions are actually identified and outlined in a description for each teacher so they understand exactly what they are getting when they come to those sessions. These sessions were developed from what we noticed in walkthroughs. So we've taken the data we gathered through walkthroughs, and we have identified some PD that teachers will benefit from. And so on March the 11th, we're very excited about this PD that we're offering here. And you can see there's round 1, 2, and 3, and the times for those. So I want to shift gears for a second and move a little ways away from the walkthrough and talk a little bit about something we discussed, I think it was the last board meeting, which was the 22 credits. We want to give you a little more information on this so to help you out some with some different items revolving around 22 credits in the graduation of 2021. So first of all, you see that the State Board of Education requires a minimum of 22 credits to graduate from high school in North Carolina. In Nash County, we require additional 6 electives, which will make it 28 credits to graduate from high school. So why would we want to use or give traditional schools flexibility for 22 credits for graduation? One may be that the students have fell behind because of items before COVID, prior to COVID. It could have started in their 9th grade year. It could have started at a particular time when their families had some tragedies. It could be a lot of things where they have fallen behind on their credits. Next, maybe students have not had the same opportunities to complete credit recovery through this COVID period. So many of those are creating or attending credit recovery while they're in school so that they can go directly to credit recovery as they are moving from class to class or moving at the end of the day. So that's an opportunity. Also, students, once again, and I mentioned this earlier, may have extenuating life circumstances that can't be helped, that could have put them behind with credits. Wanted to mention here that Tar River Academy has used 22 credits often. In fact, they use it each year. The only thing we were doing with this 22 credit situation was allowing our traditional principals a little flexibility for the 2021 year. And then I do want to point out that the 22 credit graduation will affect only a small percentage of students, and I'll give you some numbers in just a little bit. So some other notes, students will not be able to attend a four-year college immediately if they choose the 22 credits because they did not meet the requirement of Nash County schools, which is 28 credits. That does not mean they can't go to college. That just means they'll have to go through the community college first and then move to a four-year institution. Each student must graduate within their assigned cohort to count in the graduation rate. So that means that if a student does not, if they've come in 4 years previous and they are a particular year moving to their graduation cohort, if they did not graduate in this year, then they would not count for our accountability in the graduation cohort. Mr. Sharp, did you have something?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to go too fast.
No, I know I have, but, so you made a point on the other middle students will not be attend a four-year college immediately after choosing 22 credits.
Mhm.
You say that was our standard?
That is because the standard is that we have our full graduation from high school is the 6+ electives. So that means it's 22 plus the 6, which would be 28. But once again, I do want to mention that this does not mean that a student can't go to college.
Right.
Right.
So kid cannot go to a four-year university with only 22 credits. That's something, a baseline that we established. not the university, we establish.
That's based off of,
Yeah, I think it has something to do with DPI and some other, factors involved, but it's because we require 28 and this is 22. So they didn't get I consider it the full diploma. The community college would be their route than to go to a university system.
So I want to make sure I'm getting this right. That's the DPI standard, not Nash County Public School standard, it's a DPI standard.
I think it probably could be both because, DPI only requires 22, those schools require 24, some 25, so.
What about university? What are they requiring?
what the full graduation from the district they're in. So for instance, for us, it would be 28, that could be considered a full graduation.
So, okay, we established a full graduation. University established a full graduation requirement to attend the university.
Whatever the full graduation is, yes, for us, 28, which is 28 credits. For someone else, it may be, so whatever district, could be 25 if they've added some additional pieces. It's a diploma, yeah, it's a full diploma.
Are we not able to make that change? I mean, if we're going to offer this and we don't want to limit our students, why are we not able to just say, okay, well, this now is our standard, at least for just this particular circumstance this year? Because I'm sure I know that students, community college is a great option, but there will be students who want to go to for university who have had, different life experiences that will hinder them from, I guess, getting that 28. But why can we not on our end change and say, okay, well, this is still considered for under these circumstances a full diploma?
So let me just say this, Ms. Sharonda, thank you for that input, because that's exactly where I was leading to. Because there may be some students who want to go to a four-year university, but yet we've set a standard for 28, but yet they're getting the 22.
So let me explain a little more. Coursework is also involved in that. So if you look at the UNC system, there are particular courses that they must take in order to get into the school. So you have to take math, for example, math 1, 2, and 3, plus a fourth math that the universities accept. And so the 22 credit student may not have even taken the correct courses, but.
And that's good, but they may have taken all the correct courses, but yet they're at 22, they're still not eligible to get into a university.
So
They didn't graduate with our standard
Right.
of a 28 credit
That's correct.
diploma.
Even though they may have graduated with the university standard, they can't go there 4 years. And I think that's why Ms. Sharonda was alluding to, we're penalizing them because of the situation with the code. We make modifications for that. Sharonda, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's exactly what I was saying. If we're setting the standard, we need to set that standard across the board. And I'm looking, you said, Mr. Thompson, 4 credits. On the slide, it does say that they still need the math 1, 2, 3, and a fourth math that aligns with the student's post-graduation plan. So it looks to me, and I haven't gone through this and line by line, but it looks like that those things they would still have. In addition to, I know there are circumstances where lots of students already have these credits anyways. I understand that. But at the same time, I think if we're going to allow this, then we need to change the standard across the board, even if it's just for the next year or two.
Yeah, and on top of this, let me mention that our counselors, the ones that are doing the 22 credit, our counselors are in close contact with those students and to ensure what their post high school ambitions are. So that's one thing that we ask, is that they find out first what the student wants to do. Many of them want to go straight into the workforce. Many may want to go to the 2-year college, but and once again, I do want to reiterate, this does not mean that a student can't go to a 4-year college. This just means they will go through the community college route first, then move to the 4-year college. But once again, I do want to reiterate, we make it clear, counselors do check on these students because the numbers are not as high as you may think right now, and I'll share those numbers with you. But we do make it and ensure that we do know their post high school plans beforehand.
And I understand that, and I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I know you're doing what what you need to do. My issue is that these students don't always know what the future is going to hold, and they may change their mind because that's what they do. I mean, they're figuring this thing out. And as a teacher who's, in my experience, these kids, they'll change their mind over the summer and say, oh, well, yeah, I want to go to a 4-year university. My issue is not wanting to limit them, and they're not even set up to do so if they change their minds, because it happens often. It happens frequently and then now they're set back to 2 years or a year and a half before they can enter university. My issue is if we can go ahead and make that the standard, and then they have options, because if not, we're going to limit their options. And I know that community college, I'm for that if that's your choice, but I don't think we should limit them if they choose to do something else, because that's what's going to happen. And I've taught high school, and a lot of students who go to community college, they may get their associate's degree or whatever, oftentimes don't necessarily continue, because we know that life is going to happen in those 2 years, and they're going to have a lot of changes. And I would want them to have the option going in rather than having to take that second step. Why can't we go ahead and just have it, standardized so that they have that option regardless?
Well, let me also explain about community college as well. A lot of students that are going to 4-year college actually go to community college just so you know, for 2 years before they go up to 4-year college. And the reason being is honestly, it's much cheaper with the 2-year community college moving to a 4-year college situation. So we have a lot of students doing a lot of different things, but I understand exactly what you're saying. Mr. Nancy Smith, did you have something? Yeah, we do. Yeah, so we
What
would
is that percentage, Mr. Thompson, that you keep saying you're going to give it to us? Now would be a great time to hear that.
What was that, sir?
You said you're going to give us that small percentage number. Now would be a
Yeah.
good time for us to hear that.
Yeah, so right now we're looking at in 2018-19, TRA was that's Tar River Academy, of course. They graduated 51 students with 22 credits. In 1920, which if you remember, the state of North Carolina actually said that everyone had to have the opportunity to graduate with 22 credits. TRA graduated with 57. Nash Central graduated with 6. Northern Nash 9, Rocky Mount 13, and Southern Nash High School 13. And so once again, I do want to reiterate that each one of those students were assessed and asked if that what their post-high school plans were to ensure, because if their post-high school plans were to go to a 4-year college, then the counselor would have worked with them to ensure that they're at the 28.
Mr. Chair, I'm not on this committee, but I kind of feel like Ms. Bullock has a point. This may be an issue that the board might need to revisit, structure or vote on or look at further. In my facility, I often hire a lot of students that go to Tyler Academy, and I've had 3 in the last year prior to the COVID to decide that they were interested in a 4-year college degree, and they did not want to go community college. They felt like they wanted to go into hospitality online at North Carolina Central, but they ran into a roadblock because of this very issue. So I understand her point. And if we're trying to better the community at large, we definitely want to give every child the opportunity to pursue a 4-year degree, however they choose to go through it. That's my observation.
So remember, the 22 credit diploma, as Chad said in the beginning, is for kids catching up. Most kids are going to want to continue a 28 credit track, because based on what Mr. Thompson's numbers are, we're not giving a lot of 22 credit diplomas. The students at Tar River Academy are behind. That's why they're able to use that 22 credit diploma, because they can get caught up and graduate with a cohort. So you know, when it comes to the discussion of, do you want to go from 28 to 22? There are districts that do 24, 25, but they don't normally go to 22. So what we probably do is to look at other districts, we probably could, because you don't want kids to graduate too early. Because lots of districts want you to, a kid before he graduates early has to write a letter to you, explain why, they gotta have future plans. I'm sure we do that here. So you want to make sure you have enough standards so these kids aren't just leaving. But that's why we don't have a lot of 22 credit diplomas, in my opinion, because they're staying to do the 28 credits.
Well, we got to look at also, 8 units per year, 4 years is 32.
Right.
You cut it down to 28. If you cut it down to 22, that's like a kid missing a semester and a half of in-class studies to start with.
I think we've sort of gone off track to what we were focusing on issue. Can you guys hear me okay? I think we sort of
I
gone off.
can now. I couldn't earlier.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Bullock. I was sort of remote from the mic. I think we sort of gone off track a little bit. I think the question was due to this pandemic situation we're in, and if a student so desires to want to go to a 4-year high school, and I think Mrs. Sharonda Bullock explained it relatively well, because kids change their minds. And I know kids who are in predicaments that they don't necessarily want to go to college. And then I think of and I'm thinking about HBCs where I attended. We will sometimes accept students who don't necessarily have the total credit hours that's the 28 or whatever, but they will accept them. My question is, during this time, if we have a student with the 22, 24 credits who have a desire at the last minute to go to a university, can we make modifications, or can we do something, send out a letter to the university or something? I don't know what the next step would be, but what can we do with that?
And Mr.
We got
Chair,
somebody speaking, Ms. Bullock. I think we got somebody
Okay.
speaking right now.
can they speak up because I can't hear them?
Right, if they've met the guidelines of college.
So, Ms.
I think that would be up to the.
We still can't hear you.
institution.
Whoever's speaking, we can't hear you.
So I think,
Whoever asked the question.
So Ms. Nancy Smith was clarifying that it would be up to the individual university if they would accept them or not. The standard, once again, would be the complete high school diploma, but it would be in the end up to each individual
yes,
university.
okay. And that's what I think wasn't the clarity for what I was reading there for a 4-year college. You got to have 22 credit hours or 22 hours. So what I'm hearing now, if a university accept those 22, they can go into a university.
It's still up to the university.
Right. Right. And So
we're only talking about 1 year that we're doing.
that's exactly right.
Next year, 22 credit diploma is the same. It's gonna roll. We're still 28 to graduate, 22 credit diploma.
Right. And I agree with Mr. Lamb. We don't need to lower that what we're doing. But at the same time, we're doing this pandemic situation. If a young kid wants to attend a 4-year school with their option, they only got 24 credit hours or whatever, and the university decide to accept that, then they can go. That's what I'm hearing.
Each individual school's council is going to be working with those kids in that predicament too, I would imagine.
I can only imagine.
And once again with the UNC system, they're once again the full credit, but there again, if a university just says, hey, I want to accept them, then that's strictly up to the university of course, at that time.
And they might have
And then,
a process in place this year based on COVID,
Right.
but they would accept more of a student that doesn't have that thing.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna have the same problem we're having right now.
That's correct.
So
That's
I'm
correct.
sure.
So Chairman Lamb, with your permission, we would like to explore this option. But just be reminded that students still have to have the appropriate coursework to meet the requirements of the UNC system. So if they have not taken those coursework,
That's right.
coursework, even with 22 credits, they
Right.
still would not be able to go to college. And to clarify, that also includes HBCUs because
Right.
the state, the
Absolutely.
university system sets those
That's right.
coursework requirements.
There's a minimum requirement you gotta have. That's
Right.
understandable.
But we can certainly explore that and
But see, I don't think, I need to understand what are you gonna explore?
we'll look at the number of students who have the 22.
Ms. Dancy Smith, please speak up.
We will look at the number of students who have 22 credits and who have taken the appropriate coursework that lends itself to entry into a college. So that means that we may have to bring something back to the board for you to revise the policy and waive it for this school year, or to look at it in the near future.
So what I'm hearing, the university can accept that right now. You wouldn't have to waive that policy. If they decided they want to accept Bill Sharp with 22 credits, they can accept me. You don't have to change. You're looking at me sort of, is that not correct?
I'm looking a little perplexed because we just have to make sure that whatever we do, that we're following the board policy when it comes to ensuring that the coursework the kids have taken will make them eligible for a four-year university. So that's the part that we will explore.
Okay, thank
Just
you.
to see how
And-
many students we have out there right now with 22 credits and they're able to go to a four-year university.
This is for information only too.
Yes, it is.
Right.
And I have a comment, if I may.
Okay?
I think we may need to revisit this policy. When we talked about it previously, I was under the impression that a student could go to the college of his choice with 22 credits. But what I heard, and I think sometimes I couldn't hear the speakers, so let me just say what I heard and tell me if I'm incorrect. I heard that with 22 credits, that students may not be accepted at all colleges. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's how it's always been with a 22 credit diploma.
Well, when we moved to 22 credits, be it even though it's just for this year only, I think we are excluding some students who might at the last minute want to go to a four-year college and not go the community college route, but they won't have a choice. Is that correct?
Well, most of those decisions, Ms. Bullock, are usually made when they're probably juniors or mid-10th graders. So you can't sign up for a 22 credit diploma when you're a freshman or basically a sophomore. It normally happens if you're a repeater and you're a junior, and you know, it's just a different type of student. That's why it's not handed out often around here, because most kids are finishing their units. So there is no need to have the 22 credit diploma so easily to get.
So this year, this school year, 2021, if we do this 22 credit, 22 credit thing, then there could possibly be some students who in December were not thinking that they were going to any college, but in March, something happens and they decide they want to go. But if they've only aspired for 22 credits, then they are not going to be able to go. And I know that throughout the years, not just this year, last year, but throughout the years, we've heard students say, I was not told that.
Mhm.
So I don't want us to be in a situation where I had a bad day one day and I really didn't follow all the steps that I should have followed. So we don't have a paper trail. And here we've got this child saying, I've never heard that before. I don't want us to be in that situation. You see what I'm saying?
Right, but the same thing happened last year when the state decided to do this anyway. So when you sign
What did the state decide to do? Help me out.
they did the same thing last year. They allowed us to graduate those students with 22 credits if they needed help based on the COVID-19. So in a normal year, these students would meet with counselors and their parents would sign a document basically saying, I will now sign up for a 22 credit diploma. This is what a 22 credit diploma means for me.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
It just can't happen, Ms. Boyd. You're right. It can't just happen. It has to be a parent signature. And I'm almost sure Mr. Thompson has something to do with it down here because you can't just, because you're exactly right. Parents need to know what you're signing because you're saying that you cannot go to a university system. You can go through the community college system and then you can work your way up to a four-year university or college. But you're right. That conversation is going to be had by counselors based on that student's need at that time.
All right, now that piece was what I needed to hear. I still will be glad when this year is behind us so we can get back on a normal track. But at least that gives me some confidence that we're just not making a group of students that will not be able to go to a four-year college if they so choose to do. But the next question I have then is, if I graduate with a 22 credit diploma and I work for a year, and then the next year I decide to go to college and I want to go to a four-year college, how does that work?
Then you would still go through the community college because your diploma says 22 credit diploma.
So I would have to go to a community college first, regardless if I ever decided to go to college to advance in my education.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sharp?
Mr. Chair, I think this is a good conversation, but I think we need to try to push this to the policy committee so we have this discussion around the policy committee more in depth. But I appreciate the information because we can have this dialogue all night long.
Yep.
So have we moved on?
Robin Griffin will be presenting testing and accountability updates next.
All right, good evening. So just to give you a quick overview, all assessments required by federal guidance and by ESSA must be administered face-to-face. There's no workaround for that. They have to be administered face-to-face. The USCD is not accepting waivers for testing for 2021 like they did last year. So testing is still on the table for all, again, federally and ESSA mandated assessments, and they have to be face-to-face. DPI has submitted a waiver for some available components, but those are all around things like federal school designations. You'll remember the targeted support and the TSI and CSI. Those kinds of things, those kinds of designations are what DPI is asking for a waiver for. In your presentation tonight, the face-to-face and the waiver are links to documents from DPI or either the federal guidance. Once DPI submitted that waiver request to the USCD had 120 days to respond. They submitted that at the beginning of February. If you think about 120 days, technically we could be after the end of the school year at that point before we would get responses from the USED about the waiver request. So at this point, we have to move forward as though nothing has changed from previous years. As you remember, most North Carolina accountability is legislated. Things like school performance grades, growth, all of that is in legislation. So unless there is a legislative action around those changes, nothing there will change either. So if you think about North Carolina's accountability being in kind of two buckets, a state bucket and a federal bucket, the majority of the rules come from the state bucket. And most of the designations come from the federal bucket. So if you think about that in those terms, things are pretty much just moving on as they have because no legislative action has come around. On the left-hand side of the screen are the assessments that have been given so far this year. The ones in italics are the ones that were required face-to-face. And then the ones on the right-hand side are the ones that are upcoming for the spring. We gave EOCs in the fall. They went exceptionally well. The test coordinators, the teachers, and the students did an amazing job. And I don't expect anything different for the upcoming assessment cycle. If there are no questions about that, we will move on to the next slide, which is the calendar. So if you'll remember that—
Ms. Griffin.
Yes, sir.
If you'll go, so I'm looking at this slide and it says required locally for the benchmarks.
Yes.
So that's something we require, not the state.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Right,
the state highly recommends that each different district do benchmarks, and they do provide a benchmark product, but the benchmarks do not come from the state and are not mandated by federal guidance.
So I was looking at this thing and it makes me wonder, the middle of the year benchmark, we do that before, what holiday is it? Memorial Day, is that right?
The middle of the year?
I can't remember. You got one coming up before Memorial Day, is that right?
Well, what we do is we do one at the beginning of the year. That's the BOI.
Or spring break.
Right. And then we do one at what's called the middle of the year, which is about 50% of the school calendar. And then the recommendation is that the EOI, the end of year or the end of semester one, be given at about 75% of the school calendar in order to be able to get that data back and give teachers a chance to remediate and fill instructional gaps before we get to the end of grade or end of course.
I think that's the one that's making me question a little bit. So if we're going to do a benchmark before spring break, have we taught all of the material that we're testing them on?
Well, I'm
because after spring break, they come back.
But generally, yes. The majority of the content is usually taught by about 75% of the year. And then that last bit of the year is really kind of filling instructional gaps. There's very little new content that is taught at the end of the school year, the latter part of the school year.
No, not the end, before spring break. So we're talking about testing them on material and then coming back after spring break, and we've got another 3 weeks to teach them on material that so isn't that going to just skew our data on the benchmark?
No, because generally, like I said, this is the recommendation from the vendor that you do it at this point,
well, they're in
at the 75% point, so that because very little new content is taught after the spring break. The majority of that time is remediation and filling. Of course, there's always some, and especially in this environment where our pacing has not been as pure as we would hope it would be. But also if they know they haven't taught, if a teacher knows they haven't taught that content, then when they look at that data, the data around that, they would know that that's probably not as high as it will be after they've covered that content.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, vendors are going to recommend it. If I was a vendor, I'd recommend you test every month because I'm selling you something.
Well, but you can't give it too close to the end of the year assessment because then you don't have time to get the data back in order to adjust instruction. Does that make sense? So
It
you've got to have
does.
a little bit of time to turn around and get that data back and do that data analysis so they can figure out which standards the students are being challenged, you know, with.
I was just, I was just looking at this paper and I was just saying, wait a minute, we're testing them and we haven't taught them yet. And that's going to give us some bad data. But I guess from what I gather from you, it is what it is. And we just,
Yeah.
we understand
Andy
that.
Smith, are you available? Am I accurate that with the pacing, generally we've covered most of it by that point in the year?
Yes, we've worked with the company to align the benchmarks with our district pacing. And I think another way to look at it is a benchmark is a formative assessment. And what a formative assessment does is it informs a teacher's instruction. So it's not the autopsy, which is the summative assessment that we have at the end of the school year. So it does give the teacher an opportunity to diagnose what the problems are and prescribe before the end of the year when they take the summative assessment. So even though we recognize that we have a pacing guide and all of the teachers may not have covered everything because teachers move for the most part at the pace of their students and the way they respond to the instruction, all benchmarks are considered formative and not the final or the summative assessment.
Thank you.
You're certainly welcome.
Thank you.
So in the essence of time, we are just going to very briefly share next steps as we plan for the 21-22 school year. You do not have to click on any links because we're running behind schedule. But if you all have been following the news, you know that last week, I want to say last Wednesday, that the House passed Summer Learning Choice for North Carolina families, which is House Bill 82. Well, we've convened a Summer Scholars Academy Planning Committee, and we've begun planning for this summer and offering an opportunity for our students to fill some gaps for our rising first grade as well as up to our seniors. In addition to that, we've already gotten a jump start. I want to say the first kindergarten registration is held, I want to say this week, but we've begun having our kindergarten registrations and preschool applications because our kindergarten numbers are down by about 400 kids. So we know it's important that we get those kids in school. Mr. Plyler has worked really hard to apply for some additional technology grants, and we've been awarded 2 grants. So we're thinking about how we're going to use that funding next year to support the continuation of our learning management systems, as well as ensure that we have some additional supplemental resources for our students. And if you followed the news, you have heard about the new social studies standards that will be implemented next school year, beginning with our freshman class. So what we know is that we have to plan for some of those new courses, and we will start doing that late spring and early summer. Are there any questions? Robin, if we can go back to the calendar, I think we've had so many questions that we didn't talk about the calendar.
Okay, I can do that very quickly. So you'll remember that every couple of years, districts are required to create calendars for 3 years out. So we bring those to the board for a recommendation with the understanding and the expectation that we'll revisit them close each year right before we push them out for that next year. And so we have done that this year. These calendars were originally the 21-22 calendar, blows my mind that I'm even saying that out loud, was approved by you all in September of 2019. So we convened the calendar committee to just come in and review this one as you originally approved it. And then what we basically did was a quick data activity where they looked at it, made some notices and wonders. We came back the next week as a full work session where they were able to make suggestions out of what they had looked at and thought about. And so we made some minor tweaks. We did not change the number of days, the number of teacher work days, the number of mandatory or optional days, the number of student days, any of that. There was just a few tweaks with the where some work days were sitting and some choices that they had around what they wanted optional and what they wanted to be required. So those were the only changes that we made there. Were there any questions about that? The calendar adjustment? And it does not need approval. Again, this is for information only.
Thank you. On behalf of the superintendent, we submit this report for information.
Thank you. Any questions at this time? No questions this time. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bissett, second by Ms. Washington. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed likewise. Motion carried. This time I'd like to call to order the Nash Board of Education work session. I'll do a roll call. Ms. Chavis,
Here.
Mr. Edwards, Mr. Bissett,
Here.
Mr. Sharp,
Here.
Mr. Dunton,
Here.
Mr. Jenkins,
Here.
Mr. Silver,
Here.
Ms. Washington,
Here.
Ms. E. Bullock,
Here.
Ms. S. Bullock.
Here.
Also, this time I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sharp, second by Mr. Dunton. Another roll call vote. Ms. Chavis?
Yes.
Mr. Ed? Yes. Mr. Bissett?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Dunton?
Franklin, I did not second, but yes, I'm not sure who it was.
That was me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Silver.
No problem.
Mr. Silver second. All right, with Mr. Jenkins,
Yes.
Mr. Silver,
Yes.
Ms. Washington,
Yes.
Ms. E. Bullock,
Yes.
Ms. S. Bullock.
Yes.
This time I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143, 3.18.11A and 1 and A3 and A6 to prevent the disclosure of confidential personnel records under General Statute 115C 321. To consider matters relating to an individual employment of an individual employee, to prevent the disclosure of confidential student records under General Statute 115C 402, and to consult with the board's attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege.
Motion by Mr. Sharp to go in closed session. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Chavis. Roll call vote. Ms. Chavis?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Bissett?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Dunton?
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Silver?
Yes.
Ms. Washington?
Yes.
Ms. E. Bullock?
Yes.
Ms. S. Bullock?
Yes.
This time we will go into closed session.
Sheila's on. Do you want Sheila first? Okay. So, Sheila,